My name is Paul Dawley. I'm the Chief Justice of the District Court, and I'm pleased to welcome everybody here to Quincy District Court today. On behalf of the Massachusetts Trial Court, I want to welcome Governor Baker, Lieutenant Governor Polito, Speaker Mariano, Mayor Koch, and Secretary Heffernan for their presence today and for their continuing support and commitment to our justice system. I also want to recognize Quincy District Court First Justice Mark Coven and Clerk Magistrate Arthur Tobin, as well as Regional Administrative Justice Michael Vitale, and all of the courthouse staff for their dedication and excellent work here. We're very pleased today that the Governor and Lieutenant Governor are announcing their capital plan in this courthouse because the subject of today's announcement is an important component of the future of the trial court. The Governor's capital plan will assist us in providing a comprehensive approach for a more sustainable and efficient trial court system for the future. This investment will change and positively impact the delivery of justice in Norfolk County. We're grateful to this administration and to the legislature, particularly under Speaker Mariano's leadership, for their support. Governor Baker, we're grateful to you for your leadership and your support. At this time, I'm pleased to turn it over to Governor Baker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chief Justice, and we're thrilled to be here in Quincy today to talk about this project, but also to talk about many other elements of our annual capital investment plan. The plan we're releasing today lays out capital spending for state assets for the next fiscal year, but also charts a pathway for capital investments over the course of the next 5 years. The plan lays out $2.78 billion in bond cap spending for fiscal 2023, which starts on July 1st, and a total of nearly $14 billion from FY23 through FY 2027. The long-term plan leverages the unprecedented amount of federal funding that the Commonwealth will benefit from in the coming years, a lot of which is attached to the bipartisan infrastructure law. Throughout our time in office, we've focused on capital spending that specifically relates to what we call the care and maintenance of the Commonwealth's existing assets. We've prioritized targeted new investments that support economic development and improve delivery of government services. But in many ways, one of our primary efforts coming in the door was to start spending serious money on upgrading, modernizing, and maintaining a lot of our existing assets. One of the things about politics is you don't get a lot of credit for investing in an existing structure. We all know that, and it's one of the reasons why it's a tough one politically to do. But we've been very aggressive across all of our assets in making sure that we make the investments we need to make in our existing infrastructure, as well as investments in what we would describe as the new stuff. Here at Quincy Courthouse, the plan charts a course to replace this facility with a new Norfolk County Regional Justice Center that consolidates court departments. To achieve this goal, the plan provides $3.5 million in fiscal 23 to deal with what we would call sort of the front end around design, and then about $50 million a year for 3 years, and then whatever it takes to finish it in the 4th year over the course of the next 5 years. We think the project overall will cost somewhere between $150 and $160 million to get done. It's one of several projects in the capital plan that supports courthouses and courthouse activity across the Commonwealth. The plan also includes 2 new projects for the court: renovations to the Hall of Justice in Springfield, which will address HVAC and other building system issues, and finishes the upgrades that are needed on this almost 50-year-old facility. And as we said before, we've also initiated a study for this renovation. But in addition to that, the Commissioner at DCAM and her team are also working with the trial courts to identify siting options to build a replacement facility at some point down the road. The plan also includes funding for significant projects and upgrades at courthouses in Brockton, Lynn, and Framingham. Outside of the courts, we're also using this capital plan to invest in key priorities that support our economic growth as we continue to emerge from the pandemic, especially in fields like transportation, which is where a big piece of the federal funding is coming from. It provides support to implement major transportation and environmental programs, many of which are enabled by that bipartisan infrastructure law, and that'll take place over the course of 5 years. That includes more than $700 million in state matching funds, which will allow Massachusetts to access opportunities for significant additional federal funds that support highways, bridges, municipal water infrastructure, and electric vehicle infrastructure. We're also proposing another $200 million for the Chapter 90 program in this fiscal year for local road and bridge repairs, and it also includes about $25 million a year for our new municipal pavement program, which was established by the Transportation Bond Bill that we worked with the legislature on 2 years ago, and I signed into law last year. As we emerge from the pandemic, we're also using the capital plan to strengthen our healthcare system, particularly our state-owned healthcare assets. We recognize that it's been a really rough couple of years for everybody in the healthcare system and for the facilities that they work in, and COVID exposed major needs across our public system. The plan includes $171 million to continue work at Commonwealth-owned healthcare facilities, including the Department of Public Health's lab campus in Jamaica Plain and the Newton Pavilion Shattuck Hospital transition, as well as the Soldiers' Homes in Holyoke and Chelsea. Capital plan we're filing also includes significant resources to help address our housing crisis. We have roughly $1.5 billion in existing authorization, and we're providing about $150 million for the production and preservation of affordable housing, in addition to programs that support neighborhood stabilization, transit-oriented development, and climate-resilient affordable housing. We're also including $110 million to support our state-aided public housing portfolio. These investments and many others that are laid out in the capital plan this year and over the next several years will help us move forward on key priorities and position Massachusetts for future success. They're complemented by many bills that we filed in recent weeks, in particular our Mass Track Transportation Bill, which is primarily about transportation, but also includes significant investments in environmental infrastructure around the Commonwealth, and our Forward Economic Development legislation, which has projects in all 351 of our cities and towns. And we look forward to making many of those key investments in fiscal '23 and seeing these longer-term projects begin and get realized in the years ahead. The supply chain issues that we all face as a result of the pandemic are upon us, and that's no secret to anybody who's tried to buy a car. Those supply chain issues mean that we really need to get started now on stuff that we want to be in sort of full production on 2 or 3 years from now, because everything associated with acquiring both talent, but especially gear, goods, and heavy equipment are going to take several years to get from here to there. I do also want to say, and this is kind of a sidebar, that because it is Cinco de Mayo, I did have a conversation with some of the folks on my team on whether or not we could bring margaritas here to celebrate both the capital bond bill and the fact that it was Cinco de Mayo, and we were told by the court officers that that was a really bad idea, so we didn't do it. Probably the right call. I want to turn it over to the Lieutenant Governor at this point, who will talk about some of the other priorities in this plan, and I do want to thank the folks who are part of our team who put it together, and we look forward to putting some shovels in the ground and getting going. Thank you.
The governor is very creative and full of good ideas, always. I understand, though, that Mr. Tobin is hosting a taco party, so that's all good here at Quincy District Court. And I want to thank you. It's great to be here in the Bellotti named courthouse. I've been to this room multiple times, including for Law Day and drug diversion programs. I want to thank Chief Hoban, Judge Heffernan, and others, and of course the trial court staff in this facility and across our Commonwealth for your incredible work day in and day out, and obviously over the course of these past few years that have been very, very difficult for everyone. It's great to be here with Chief Dolly and Speaker Mariano. You'll hear from Mayor Koch to close us out, and you'll hear from Secretary Heffernan in just a moment. As the governor laid out the overview of our capital plan, he talked about not only fiscal '23, but that this is a 5-year plan that we're presenting and releasing today. I'm going to highlight several categories that I think are particularly important. One is regarding the higher ed system. It includes 15 community colleges, 9 state universities, 5 UMass campuses, serving approximately 215,000 students. You may have children or grandchildren or friends that have attended one of these wonderful institutions, but they also need investments just like our courthouses. And so this plan is addressing 4 major new capital projects for a total commitment of $120 million, with $2.8 million in initial spending in fiscal year '23. It also includes a new accelerated building infrastructure program, so not only addressing horizontal infrastructure through our capital program, but also vertical infrastructure needs that obviously have to be addressed. Approximately $165 million will be expended over the next 5 years to repair and update HVAC systems, stuff that you don't see that needs to be paid attention to, building envelopes to make our buildings more energy efficient, elevators, et cetera, to make them more functional for the future. In addition, our plan, as the governor talked briefly about, addresses climate change and ways that we can better protect our environment. Our administration started what's known as the Municipal Vulnerability Program, working closely with all of our communities to do an assessment of their infrastructure to determine where they're vulnerable and how to build it in a more resilient fashion that will stand up to the test of time of climate changes in our future. $17.5 million will be devoted to this effort for the years to come, as well as $12 million for inland dams and seawalls, and $10 million for municipal mass trails. We have an incredible network of trails throughout the Commonwealth that add to the quality of life for our residents and visitors. We did not need a pandemic to prove that the great outdoors to be enjoyed, and to have these trails and these areas to escape to in an afternoon or a weekend is a great asset for our Commonwealth. $8.3 million for greening the gateway cities. Big, important news to friends like Mayor Koch, which has already planted nearly 33,000 trees and a goal of planting at least 20,000 more trees over the next four years. You can't have 19,990 trees here, Mayor Koch, but you could get your fair share for sure. You'll also see us continue to support the Food Security Infrastructure Program. This is a program that, working in conjunction with legislative colleagues to address food insecurity during the pandemic, helped us to reimagine how to source food locally, work with fishermen and farmers all throughout New England, and figure out how to package food in a way that can be easily distributed to our food pantries and to people in need in our communities. This is now becoming a permanent program, and our budget and plan includes $12.5 million for that. And then finally, our local economies in our downtown. Clearly, world has changed since the pandemic. People can work from anywhere they want, including work from home. And that requires us to help communities think about the kinds of places and services and needs and wants that local officials have to see in their downtowns and main streets. It cannot be done the same way we've done it the last 50 years. It's an approach that needs more creativity to help our downtowns and main streets have the kind of vitality that you see here in Quincy in our communities all throughout our Commonwealth. That's why the $97 million for the MassWorks program is critically important, $21.7 million for underutilized properties, and $35 million for capital programs to help industry sectors like life sciences continue to grow and thrive. So there's a lot in this plan, and it took a lot of thinking on behalf of our secretaries and agencies, working in conjunction with Secretary Heffernan and the team at ANF to carefully map this out so that there literally is a roadmap. There's money baked in to these projects and programs for not only this year, but for the next 5 years. And for us, we're thrilled to see that happen as we exit office at the end of the year, continue to provide the resources needed to see our communities and places in our Commonwealth get the support that they need. So thank you for your listening time today, and I'd now like to turn it over to Secretary Heffernan.
Thank you, Madam Lieutenant Governor. First, I want to thank the Governor and the Lieutenant Governor for their continued leadership and vision, which has enabled us to have a successful capital program over the past 7 years and has guided us in the development of this impactful plan for fiscal years 23 through 27. Our capital budget team at A&F has worked incredibly hard to develop this spending plan, and a huge thank you goes to Assistant Secretary Caitlin Connors, Capital Budget Director Timur Yantor, and our budget analysts for their diligence and tireless efforts, along with that of our secretaries and their agencies. The Governor and the Lieutenant Governor have highlighted some of the many programs and projects supported by this plan. I will spend a little time discussing its fiscal aspects. The fiscal 23 capital plan has $2.78 billion in state bond cap, funded by the proceeds of general obligation bonds. This is a fiscally responsible package informed by numerous economic factors and, notably, the bond cap recommendation of the Debt Affordability Committee. This spending amount is $125 million in increase in the bond cap above fiscal 22 spending plans. This allows us to target expansion in critical areas of need across all areas of state government while maintaining core programs and projects. In addition to utilizing $2.78 billion in state bond cap, the overall capital plan is also supported by federal funds, special obligation bonds, and project revenue and self-funding and other sources. In fiscal 23, the total of all funding sources will be $4.86 billion. The plan released today also provides a blueprint for capital spending over the next 5 years, laying out $13.9 billion from fiscal 23 through fiscal 27, and capitalizing on the significant federal funding the Commonwealth will receive in coming years. The fiscal 23 through 27 plan is supported by $24.76 billion across all funding sources over the next 5 years. These plans program more than $2.8 billion from the federal bipartisan infrastructure law. And as the governor mentioned, it incorporates more than $700 million in state matching funds to allow Massachusetts to unlock even more federal funding that will substantially expand our investment in existing transportation infrastructure, environmental programs, and new programs. In total, across the 5-year plan, $5.3 billion will support transportation investments, another $1.5 billion will support environmental initiatives. This capital plan supports a balanced portfolio of projects that focuses on the maintenance of our existing assets and targeting new investments that will drive growth while ensuring that investments are designed and implemented with climate change preparedness and in mind wherever possible. Nearly 40% of the investments in the fiscal 23 plan integrate climate change mitigation and resiliency components. The plan continues to embrace the administration's fix-it-first approach to strengthening and modernizing the state's buildings and facilities. With $608 million dedicated to DCAM's work in fiscal 23, this will include the higher education projects and courts projects that both the governor and the lieutenant governor discussed. And especially important, as Massachusetts continues to recover from the pandemic, this plan continues efforts to spur economic development and support local communities. $245 million in fiscal 23 will be invested in economic development initiatives, representing a 94% increase in the level of capital investment in this area since the administration came into office. The plan also continues to provide significant resources in support of increased and more affordable housing options, and for investments in public safety, education, health and human services, and technology, as well as cybersecurity infrastructure. The 5-year plan will be supported by authorizations filed across several bond bills, including the General Government Bond Bill, the Mass Track Infrastructure Bond Bill, and the Forward legislation. We look forward to collaborating with our partners in the legislature to pass those bills into law and continue our partnerships with stakeholders across the Commonwealth to implement the many investments in this capital plan that will deliver benefits to the residents of Massachusetts for years to come. And it is now my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce the representative from the 3rd Norfolk and the 86th Speaker of the House, the Honorable Ron Mariano.
As someone who grew up about 4.5 blocks from here, and never having visited as a young man, I'm really happy to be here today, not in any other iteration in my lifetime. I do want to just begin by thanking a couple of guys in the front row from the county government, 2 county commissioners, Dick Stady and Joe Shea, who have worked with us through this whole iteration of this courthouse becoming the Frank Bellotti Courthouse. And I just want to take a brief minute and talk about that for a second. Frank Bellotti was an extremely important to me as a kid growing up in Quincy, being the first Italian statewide politician that I ever saw. And he just turned 99 last week. And so I had the good fortune of being able to tell him that this was coming. And I wish you could have seen his smile. It really was a touching event. But moving forward, I want to say a few words about the governor and the lieutenant governor, and even the secretary, who is behind the scenes with, always has a pad and he's writing stuff down. I never know what he's writing. But we couldn't get a more responsive group of executive leaders in this Commonwealth who understand, and I think the governor hit the nail on the head. You don't get a lot of credit for fixing things that you have. But these things need to be repaired. Nothing lasts forever, neither do we. And as they begin to move on, they understand the commitment that they have made to the folks in the Commonwealth of maintaining our assets. And getting his attention on this was so remarkably easy. I still pinch myself that we're here today as quickly as we are. Having gone through this for a long time, I've been doing this for 30 years, and this was one of the easiest landings of any project I've ever had, and that's due to this team that's behind me. Their attention to the real needs in every community in the Commonwealth should not go unapplauded. It is significant. I'm one of 160. So if he's got me yapping at him, I know he's got 159 other people yapping at him. All of us think our issues are the most important. But the governor is charged with sifting through all of them and picking out the ones that really need the most attention. And I think that's why we're here, and that's why we got here as quickly as we did. So with that, I just want to thank the governor personally and the lieutenant governor personally and the secretary. I think the general bond bill is in 2 weeks, so sharpen your pen and start spending more money. But anyway, I am just proud to work with these folks on things like this. It is really, it's really a game changer. We are going to have something in the center of the city that is a regional justice center, which is a true commitment to the memory of Frank Bellotti. So with that, I want to thank the governor, and I would like to introduce the guy who's hired all the trucks that are driving around with all the cranes. The mayor of Quincy, Tom Koch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You're more than one of 160. You're the speaker, and I'm glad you are, as the mayor of Quincy. And it's good to see the county commissioners here with us. And this is a great day for the courthouse, the personnel of the courthouse. What happens here each day is very important. And people should be treated with respect and with dignity. And this place is tired, logistically challenged, and cannot meet the volume each and every day. So this is a big day. So I congratulate the court personnel, the judges who do great work here. I too want to express my gratitude to the big guy behind me. Both Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito have been incredible partners in government. I'm in my 15th year, so half of my tenure has been with the Baker-Polito administration. And they've never ducked an issue. And though I know Ron says there's a lot of important issues across the Commonwealth, well, my priorities are Quincy issues, quite frankly. And I say that with all due respect to those issues. But along those lines, early on, the governor and lieutenant governor stood up immediately on transportation issues. The MBTA was falling apart, absolute disaster. And governors usually don't touch the T because it's a separate authority. And this governor and lieutenant governor have done that. We've seen tremendous improvements in the T. We got a ways to go, but it was neglected for a long time. His stand and leadership on the addiction issues. I know this courthouse knows very well what that does to our society. He took that on, and we follow. In fact, we got more work to do because we've lost some traction over the last couple of years with the pandemic. You could walk from here and go over to Kilroy Square, and at the end of Dunford Drive, that road connection was funded by a MassWorks grant. You could cross Hancock Street and see the beautiful General's Park and Bridge. That bridge was a MassDOT project. You could go north and head to the Hancock Adams Common, which is one of the most beautiful public spaces, I would say, in the region. And that project was with the start of, again, Mass Works monies. Maybe it was Gateway monies, I'm not sure, but it was state monies that this governor saw fit to fund us. And certainly behind me, the speaker saw fit to fund it for the governor to award those things. This is the time of year we present our budget to the City Council and School Committee. We have a $4.7 million increase in local aid. That's huge. 3.5 of that is Chapter 70, education. Again, the governor and legislature working so well together. I think so many states in the union could learn from the incredible leadership team we have. It's not about Democrat, Republican, it's about doing the right thing for the residents. And this project is the right thing. Thank you, Governor.
Governor, you talked about supply chain issues. Can you talk about what you're doing to get in front of that for a lot of this infrastructure plan?
Well, part of the reason we filed both the additional state share to match competitive grants at the federal level under the bipartisan infrastructure law was to make sure that we had our house in order. I'm assuming, and I can almost guarantee that we will get a transportation and environmental infrastructure bill back from the legislature by the end of the session, because they know as well as we do that to truly access not just the formula money, where you also have to demonstrate your match, but all the competitive money that's available under the bipartisan infrastructure law, you need to have your money appropriated and available to be spent alongside the federal money. So point number one, get your fiscal house in order so that you're in a position to say, when you start bidding on a lot of this federal funding, that you have your resources authorized so that you can make your payments associated with how this is supposed to work. The second thing is to sort of tee up what I would describe as a set of projects and initiatives that, that qualify under the program. And we've been working on that since last fall. And I think once the dust settles on some of the rules at the federal level, we will start being able to access those funds. And once you have the funds, you can do the design work. Once you do the design work, you can start accessing what I would describe as the materials you need to actually follow through and execute. Same goes with a lot of the stuff we filed in the economic development bill. It's a very big bill, and it has tons of projects in it. There's projects in all 351 cities and towns in that bill. Part of the reason we did it that way was so that cities and towns, if the legislature acts on them, cities and towns will be able to move quickly to start doing the work they need to do around design and planning and all the rest, so that they can then start chasing resources and materials that will be necessary to actually build those things. I personally think whatever you used to think your supply chain was going to look like, if it used to be 6 months to get this and a year to get this and a year to get that, it's probably going to be a year, 2, and 2. So from my point of view, and everybody is going to be sort of coming at this more or less the same way, and unfortunately probably at about the same time. So my view, we should do everything we can to get all of our sort of ducks in a row around authorizations and financing and projects identified, so that people can then just go and do the work that's associated with following through on that as quickly as possible. My great fear, my biggest fear, is if we wait 2 years to do this, it'll be 6 years, because we'll be behind everybody else who will now be in front of us waiting for these supply chains to catch up.
It seems appropriate because we're in a courthouse to talk about Roe versus Wade, and if you had anything you wanted to say to reassure constituents and what the stance is here in Massachusetts.
Well, here in Massachusetts, we have passed a number of bills, and we have court decisions that basically assure women's rights to both reproductive health services and abortion services, if need be, here in the Commonwealth, irrespective of what happens at the federal level. And that's a really good thing. But I have had conversations with some folks in the legislature and with some legal folks. And remember, all of this depends on what ultimately shows up in the language of this decision. But we have talked about whether or not we're going to need to do things here in Massachusetts that will make it possible for people who can access some of these services in other states to maybe access them here. And then what do we need to do with regard to that? I do know the House, I think you folks put $500,000 in the budget for access to those services here in the Commonwealth.
I wanted to, go ahead.
Governor, I wanted to ask you about we've heard about the dumping in Chelsea off of the bridge.
Yeah, I know that there are DEP people doing Environmental Protection people who've been doing analysis on that construction project, and I know that they are talking to the folks at DOT. I don't know anything beyond that at this point in time, but obviously, we'll do whatever we can to make sure we deal with whatever community issues might be involved with respect to that. But the first I heard about it was today.
Governor, along the same lines, a lot of the activists in that area are making a couple of claims. Number one, they're saying that things are being dumped in Chelsea because it's a more low-income community where people don't speak English as a first language, and they're frustrated saying this wouldn't happen in other communities that are different. If you can address that. And secondly, activists say that there was an environmental justice council that they had proposed on the state level, and that has not been addressed, and it shows now why it needs to be. You can address that.
Well, the first one I would say is that this administration has proven for the past several years in the midst of a pandemic that it takes what goes on in Chelsea extremely seriously. We have been partners side by side. Many members of our administration have received awards from many leaders in Chelsea for the work we've done to help the folks in Chelsea on food security, housing, vaccines, testing, and a whole series of other issues associated with mitigating and dealing with the pandemic. So our track record on this one is pretty clear with respect to the way we deal with and respect and admire and support the folks in Chelsea. So I categorically reject that argument. With respect to the second one, there are criteria and specificity around the people who can serve on that council. And finding people who meet those criteria with specificity is not an easy thing to do. Many of the folks who we have reached out to and have met those criteria are ready to be appointed. I think we have 2 people left we need to find. But that council, which came with the legislature with some very particular criteria around who could serve on it, requires a lot of work to fill it, and once we get them filled, they'll start meeting and moving forward. I agree it's late, but part of that's driven by the fact that there are some very particular skill sets that need, and geography that needs to be part of that.
Thanks, everyone. Will you sign the driver's license bill if it passes the Senate today?
You know, I've said many times that I don't comment yes or no, up or down on legislation when it's pending, because it has this funny tendency to change from day to day, sometimes from hour to hour. And early on in our administration, I actually said I would sign a particular bill that changed a lot between the time I said that and the time it got to my desk, and I ultimately amended it and sent it back to the legislature. So I'm not going to answer that question today. What I will say is I'm troubled by the fact that we now have a situation where a number of people are going to get a driver's license under the current bill that looks exactly like every other driver's license, and we use our registry of motor vehicles to sign people up automatically to vote. And I think this issue, which was debated in the House and rejected to create some direct connect between town clerks and the registry of motor vehicles to make sure these issues got dealt with, didn't get passed during the House debate. I don't know what's going to happen during the Senate debate, but I remain concerned about the fact that we're conflating 2 issues here. There are many states that have driver privilege cards. They are different than a driver's license. What Massachusetts is currently proposing is a driver's license that looks exactly the same for everybody, except that there's no distinction between those who are eligible to vote and those who aren't. And we rely on driver's license to make decisions about voting. And so what we had said was we think there ought to be some ability for our registry of motor vehicles people and our town clerks to have statutory authorization to engage with one another around this issue to make sure people get this right. As of right now, they don't have it. That's important.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody, for being here.